19th Economist panel. It is 10 o'clock, so we will indeed make a start. And first of all, welcome to Councillor Sam Amar, who's new to the panel, replacing Councillor McSweeney as a substantive member. So, and welcome, of course, to all of the officers and indeed the Cabinet member. Nice to see you, Alan. So, in terms of apologies, we have Councillor Alan Bales, and his name substitute is Councillor Cross. So, welcome. And indeed, everyone else is here, save for we do have 2 vacancies. With that, having dealt with apologies and named substitutes, are there any declarations of interest in any party whip anybody would like to declare? No? No public participation, in which case we've got 2 substantive items on the agenda. The first of which is Shrub Hill Quarter, of which we requested, I think, several meetings ago to come before the panel. So I guess I'll ask Gary and or Penny to present the paper. Penny to present the paper, which is obviously ahead of our corporate landlord, and then we'll have some questions and no doubt comments for you. So over to you, Penny.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Penny Unwin, the head of corporate landlord, but I'm also the lead for Shrub Hill, and I've been involved with the proposals for the redevelopment of Shrub Hill for a number of years now. I last presented to the Economy Overview and Scrutiny Committee in July 2024, in which I provided a history on the development of the vision for Shrub Hill and the work that we've done to secure funding to support this vision. As a reminder, that vision for Shrub Hill would include the creation of 5,000 new jobs and over 500 new homes, as well as forming a new gateway to Worcester City through Shrub Hill Station and 2 hectares of new public realm. At that point, I reported that we had secured nearly £12 million of funding through grants, and since then we've secured a further £1.1 million of brownfield land release funding grant for the demolition and remediation of the land around what is known as Unit 1 of the Shrub Hill Industrial Estate. Unit 1 is a dilapidated steel and brickwork building. It was in very poor condition and required significant upgrade works before it would be lettable and compliant with the minimum energy efficiency standards, and actually provided an opportunity for it to be a catalyst for the redevelopment of what we call the upper yard in Shrub Hill Industrial Estate, that part of Shrub Hill, and offers an opportunity for, it was a really good opportunity for some redevelopment. So the building was taken down in September of this year. That building's now been demolished. And it will form part of the parcel of land that goes out to market for a development partner. In February this year, Cabinet also approved the procurement of a development partner and our strategy for that procurement. The original tender exercise that we ran the early part of this year was unsuccessful due to a combination of factors, which I've outlined in the Cabinet report, paragraph 12. And as a result, we took a proactive decision to withdraw the opportunity at that point and review the proposal. This has allowed us to take on some valuable feedback from the commercial development community, the market, who are and do remain interested in Shrub Hill. And we're going to be making some refinements before bringing it back to market next year, early next year. The securing of a development partner for Shrub Hill is a long-term partnership, and it's important we get that right. We also feel that the new procurement rules that came into effect this year will allow us to take a more, they call it a competitive flexible procedure, so have more dialogue with those interested parties about exactly how that partnership will work and that development partnership will work going forward. So we think that will help us get to the outcome we want. And in the meantime, other work has progressed across Shrub Hill. So the new shared use link, which is funded by Towns Fund, is well underway and will open to the public in January 26. And the strip out and asbestos removal of Isaac Maddox House is taking place ahead of the refurbishment of that building as an enterprise centre, and that alone will create 400 new jobs and 5,000 square metres of new commercial combination of office and commercial space within the city. So we've continued to make, since we last came to Scrutiny Committee, we've continued to make progress with a number of projects, secure further funding, and are in the process now of just reviewing that procurement strategy before we go back out to market for our development partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Penny. So I think I'll just open it up to questions. So, and I know that we've got a number. Who'd like to go first? Councillor Amar, then Councillor Cross.
Thank you very much. You said that you've taken some learning points. Could those learning points be transferred to other tenders? And could you give us one or two of those learning points at least, please, so we know what went wrong? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Absolutely, they do. I mean, I think the dialogue with the market and the sorts of developers that we want to be working with is really important, so that when we do go out to tender and publish a tender, we know that the way we've structured it is well understood by the market, the timing's right. The timing was wrong last time, we make sure we get the timing right. So I think there are a number of things that we can do up front of actually publishing a tender that will mean that we're in the best position to get it well received when we do publish. And as I've said in the report as well, we also think the new procurement rules will make a big difference to it.
Good, thank you. Councillor Cross.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. I'd like to understand, please, are there constraints within the Towns Fund grant or other, the BLRF, about how Isaac Maddox House may be used? And I've got another question as well, but if you take them sort of one by one, that might be better.
Yes, certainly. So the grant funding that we've had does have conditions. We've had 2 Brownfield Land Release Fund grants. Both of those are specifically for public sector owned or local authority owned land, brownfield land, that must be released for housing. So for both of those plots, they must support the development of housing. For the Towns Fund grant, the business case, so it was Worcester City Council who were awarded the Towns Fund, and the County Council has a funding agreement in place with the City Council to draw that down. That was subject to a Cabinet report in October 23. The business case that was put together for Shrub Hill to secure that funding specifically identified the outputs being the 5,000 square metres of commercial space, if you like, which is the entirety of Isaac Maddox House building. So it was based on the complete building coming forward for office and commercial use. The business case also put forward that would create 400 new jobs. So that's an output or an outcome of the of that business case. And Towns Fund grant also talked about the creation of new public realm. I think that was 2,000 square metres, but I'll have to check the report. So yeah, new public realm, commercial space and jobs with it.
Thank you. So its use seems fairly clear. I mean, is that binding on us in terms of how we can't change the goalposts in terms of how to use it?
No, I mean that's backed up by the funding agreement we've got in place with the City Council for drawing down that grant funding. The Cabinet paper in October 23 did go into some detail about that funding agreement. So, for example, if we sell Isaac Maddox House within the first 5 years, any profit uplift from beyond the grant that was secured needs to be reinvested back in Shrub Hill. So it's sort of trying to secure the money going into Shrub Hill, but essentially, yes, it has to support the creation of that office space.
Thank you, that's very helpful to know. Paragraph 12, the reasons for that contractors gave for not engaging in not bidding. Are these in order of priority as stated, or was it largely that the timing just wasn't favourable? We're busy, no diary availability, not going to quote on it yet, or was it that the contractors have any contractors stated, or what percentage of how many contractors have stated, and how true does it sound about them saying no appetite from our perspective of doing this because there's not enough margin in it, or have they? Or separately, has doubt been voiced about the commercial viability of the scheme to say, this isn't going to work? Which, I mean, contractors I'm aware of don't care about whether it works, they just want to get paid for the work they do. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So, we were talking to a number of developers, and they didn't necessarily all express all four. That was, for some the timing was wrong, the product was right, the timing was wrong. For others, the product was slightly wrong, no issue with the timing. So there's no real priority order in them. I think clearly for the developer that's going to get involved with Shrub Hill, they need to ensure that they think they can deliver a profit off the redevelopment of the land that they take forward. And I think that's where some of the questions about certainty over the development came in.
I would probably add that that certainty and making sure they can deliver, that there's a cost to that. So some of the feedback relates to, in terms of engaging in which we have to, in terms of being a public organisation, an open and transparent procurement process. Therefore, in putting your bid, there's a degree of risk and uncertainty, but you have to commit the cost to that. And hence, I think that is covered in kind of point 1, where some of them kind of said, well, and it was a timing issue where a number of these developers a number of opportunities came to market at the same time. So, they can only commit a certain amount of resource. So I think that was probably a part of that, and that's part of the timing, the bidding and the procurement process that obviously with the Act changes slightly, but nevertheless, people will look at the opportunity and weigh it up for themselves.
Great. Councillor Birch, then Councillor Price. Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah. Go on.
Thank you. So in terms of cost to certainty, could that be summed up as contractor saying, wrong client, not wrong project, just in terms of their window at that particular time, in terms of type of client, not necessarily casting aspersions on us, but just in terms of saying, if I do this job, I know I'm going to get paid on X date, rather than how things may be open-ended from a public procurement exercise?
It's not the wrong client. Essentially, the structure of it might be, there might be a sort of, there's a relationship with the developer, but essentially what they would do is secure planning permission, and then when they've got permission, draw it down and take a profit off the development then at that point. So essentially the relationship with the county council would be in putting together that holistic plan for all of the areas that they're going to develop, making sure it's coherent and consistent with the supplementary planning document for Shrub Hill. But ultimately, we then wouldn't interfere within their development process once they've drawn down those plots and start developing it.
Good. Councillor Birch.
Thank you very much, Sharon. My question is more around the viability of the scheme as it stands in today, in 2025. From my experience on district, we're seeing an increasing number of applicants coming forward to change, especially with speculative developments where there's been an outline planning permission, to change from Class E to Class B developments for their units because they're not finding, in fact in a recent scheme in Droitwich, they didn't deem office use as viable anymore. They didn't believe that they would be able to find an end tenant, so instead they changed that to Class B use. We've recently just seen very, very similar in Droitwich, the redevelopment of a site purely private, the Row, which was a mix between commercial and office units. I went to the opening 6 weeks ago and I've just checked on Rightmove, and according to Rightmove there's still 5 units still available that they haven't been able to rent out, and that is a mix of both the commercial and the office use. So with the level of business confidence as it stands, and with the fact that we're not seeing these units taken up elsewhere, is it still a viable scheme as it stands? I appreciate that the funding is somewhat tied, but to continue to invest in a project that might not be deliverable and ultimately might not lead to people actually using the site or moving in or being able to occupy it, is it still viable to plough ahead with it?
Yeah, really good question, and actually this is a lot of office space to bring onto the market at once, and so that it isn't our plan to bring it all on at once, and the funding doesn't require it to all come onto the market at once. We're talking about Isaac Maddox House here, which is the enterprise centre. So we believe there's really good demand, really strong demand for those smaller commercial units on the lower ground floor, and in fact they were all occupied, or the majority of them were occupied up until the point where we needed to get into the building to strip out and replace the services and so on within the building. So we do believe there's a strong market for those units. We've looked and taken commercial advice on the office market, and our proposed fit out of the 2 floors of office spaces is on the back of that advice that we've had, and the proposal is to bring it forward in phases so that we don't bring it all in at once. And clearly that will allow us to, by the building lends itself to being phased in the redevelopment and the way it's brought forward, so that will allow us to review how well each of those phases have done and adjust potentially our strategy for the next phase, if that makes sense.
I'd probably add, with the local enterprise partnership hat on, we've worked with John Dillon as commercial agent. He's worked with the commercial agent community, and they've done an annual report now for probably the last 4 or 5 years on the office and industrial market in the county. There is a difference, we won't be surprised to know that, between each of the areas, but particularly in the city, office space is in short supply. So I think I understand that element around, is this viable? But what the market's telling us through those reports, and it's not just John Dillon, but it's all our local commercial agents coming together, it's saying that there's an undersupply in Worcester.
Anything else, Councillor Birch? No. Councillor Price, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, one under finances and one I'll pick up on in a minute. Just reading through the documents, we talk about the money we secured, but how much have we actually spent so far?
So the only money the County Council has spent is in the purchase of Shrub Hill Industrial Estate. It hasn't put any other funding in to this point in the redevelopment, other than any investment it's made as part of its role as landlord to the units on the Shrub Hill Industrial Estate.
Okay, thank you. Let me rephrase the question then. So in terms of the grants that we've received, how much of those grants have been spent?
Yeah, so there's about £13 million worth of grant received. We've probably about 4 or 5 million. The majority, so we've still got the majority of the Townsfield, the Towns Fund grant to still discharge, which is on the refurbishment of Isaac Maddox House. So yeah, less than half at the moment. But all of them are in contract to be spent. So there's no risk of not spending the grants.
Okay, so if we face any further delays, is there any risks to the funding? Is there any timelines set out by the government on these funding grants at all?
There is. So the Towns Fund grant, which is administered via Worcester City Council, I believe has a spending deadline of March 2028. But we have got a contract in place to undertake the refurbishment of Isaac Maddox House with a programme that meets that deadline. The Brownfield Land Release Fund grants, we've done the demolition on both of those plots. We haven't completely discharged the whole of the grant yet, but we have got a contract in place to do that.
Okay, thank you. So in regards to 2028, if we surpass that and we still haven't moved anything forward, what would the risk be financially to this council?
I think that intervention would happen well before then. I think if the City Council, who are the administrators of that grant, are not satisfied that we have commenced work, essentially what we do is we draw down that grant funding 6 months in advance. So we draw that down twice a year in advance. So if there is no plan to spend the money and we haven't shown plans to spend the money, then the City Council can review the allocation of that grant and potentially reallocate it to other projects.
Thank you. I've just got one more question, if that's okay. In terms of where our economic benefits lie, do we think that we can still achieve the same economic benefits considering the feedback we've had from the developers so far? Because we mentioned that we're going to go back with refinements. Does that change the economic casework that we've already undertaken?
The economic benefits that we talk about in the vision are now supported by the supplementary planning document for Shrub Hill. So essentially, the vision was based on some master planning that was done across the whole of Shrub Hill Quarter, not just the land that the County Council owns, but the whole of Shrub Hill Quarter. That master plan informed the number of housing growth that could be achieved and the amount of commercial space, which is obviously used to calculate jobs created. That master plan, that vision, was then consulted on by Worcester City Council as part of developing a supplementary planning document. It was had very good response in terms of the consultation on that SPD, and that was adopted by the City Council in I believe it was September 2024. So now any planning applications in Shrub Hill will need to take account of and consider that supplementary planning document. So it is supported in planning now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, then Councillor Burke.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Interesting report. How much has it cost the County Council to produce this initial tender? That's my first question.
Very good question. I haven't got the figure to hand. I could come back and clarify that.
Okay. Fair enough. A little disappointed because I think it's important we make sure these costs don't just run away from us. And we're having to go out to another tender process. I mean, this is all public money. So you mentioned the product was regarded as being wrong. So I'm concerned when we bring the tender process back forward and spend even more of our residents' money, that we get it right. So what specifically was wrong with the product?
I suppose it's not necessarily there was something wrong with the product, and apologies, maybe that was wasn't intended to mean that. I think what we have in Shrub Hill isn't going to be right for everyone, so it's making sure that we're really clear what we do have, what that opportunity is with the market. It doesn't mean we're necessarily changing what we have. We know the land we own, the land we have control of, we know what we've been able to deliver so far, what funding we've secured, and what the planning position is on Shrub Hill. So essentially it's more about how we communicate that than changing the product necessarily. For some developers, they will only be interested in residential development, and they would not necessarily be interested in what we're putting forward. For other developers, there's other reasons why they might not be interested. So it's the wrong product for certain developers, rather than it's the wrong product, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, sort of, but that, as it's gone out to tender and nobody's taken the worm off the hook, it's a bit worrying that, and initially you did say it was some of them regarded it as being the wrong product. Now, if some only do houses and some only do offices, it obviously makes sense to me, as somebody who ran a business for 30 years, that you split the product in two. So you produce two tenders, one for somebody to do the business side of it and one to do the home side. So I think that should be, I'd be interested to see how much it did cost for the tender process. I think we need to have that, Chair. I think you need to perhaps look at the tendering process and certainly consider splitting it, because we can't end up a year later coming back and you'll say, unfortunately, we haven't got anybody on the hook yet, but we're confident the third tender will go forward, and I'm sure we'll be able to do it this time. So how much is it costing the taxpayer to keep this site ticking over?
So Shrub Hill Industrial Estate, obviously, a large part of the estate is occupied, has tenants. Those tenants pay service charges. So, in effect, that part of the estate is looking after itself in terms of income and service charge to cover costs. The County Council is responsible for the parts of the estate where we have emptied the buildings and demolished the land, and that's all managed within our sort of overall account for the operation of Shrub Hill Industrial Estate.
I was hoping you'd be able to give me a figure. I think you need to come back with a figure again for this. It's a bit...
When you look at Shrub Hill Estate itself, within the revenue account, it's cost neutral. So we actually have a nil budget for that. So the income that Penny's described from the tenants, we use to offset any costs that WCC may incur on that site.
Yes, thank you. I do realise that, but if we take away the rent that you're getting in, we need to know the figure, how much is going out to keep this Isaac Maddox house and the other parts ticking over, which is effectively a cost to the taxpayer, even though we're getting revenue in, because you could argue that every time for everywhere. And then finally, I'm concerned because you seem to think there is a demand for office space. Why hasn't it been taken up on the rest of the estate? Because I know there are empty offices on there.
There's not office spaces on Shrub. There's units, there are units available, but not office space.
I would argue that Unit 3, which is my former offices, I believe upstairs is all empty at the moment. I'm prepared to be told I've got that wrong, but last time I looked, it was offices upstairs all empty, and they haven't been taken.
Yeah, you're right, it is empty. It's not the same product that we're talking about, though, in terms of the level of fit out and type of office space that the market's looking for.
Chair.
Good. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, and sorry to come back, but I just wanted to expand it. Maybe that my interpretation of it is wrong. But when we spoke about the office uses, when I asked my previous question, you mentioned that it wasn't all to be put on the market all at once, and therefore there was possibly the capacity to the option to look at reviewing it as it goes through. My concern is that one of the concerns from the when we went out to tender in the first place was around sort of the certainty of the project and what it was to be made up of. And if we were to deliver, say, 30% of the office units and then look at changing that proposal, well, that might leave whoever goes out to tender for this quite irritated by the fact that we're changing the goalposts. And I'm just wondering whether before we go out for a second tender, whether there's any value in ensuring that what we put forward is spot on in terms of whether there's any capacity to go back to Worcester City and look at, when we talk about mixed-use development, whether there's any options to look at whether B-class units are also suitable to be mixed in with this project. Because I accept the point that, yeah, office space in Worcester City is somewhat limited, but within the wider Worcestershire is quite readily available. And I think for a number of companies, there are very few that will be that sort of protective about staying within the city boundaries. So my concern is around the amount of office and retail units that we're offering, and whether there is the need to mix that up a little bit more so that we're able to provide some real certainty to whoever comes forward for the tender in terms of this is what we're going to deliver. There isn't necessarily the same capacity to change it halfway through and move the goalposts. Because ultimately, I do think that the site is a prime site for development. I think it is the right site to develop, and I think there's a really good opportunity there for us. But I just think it's important we get it right and make the most of it, being in such a prime location within the city.
So there is a process. So the Towns Fund grant is subject to its own governance and processes, and it's the business case within the Towns Fund grant where we talk about the amount of commercial space that that will be brought forward through the Enterprise Centre. There are processes within that grant for change control if for any reason we don't think that can be brought forward. However, it's commercial space, so it's quite a broad term that's being used to describe that in the business case. I think what is key is the creation of the jobs and the space, bringing space forward, redeveloping that part of the city, enabling jobs to be created. Exactly what that looks like and the types of uses and exactly how that comes out, I think will have to reflect what the market's looking for as well.
Okay, that's great, because my point around, I agree, Class E is very broad and diverse in terms of what the options are available, but we're looking at what is currently and what has been quite a industrial area of the city that is essentially being almost flipped on its head and turned into a purely commercial area of the city, and whether there is a balance to be made in the middle, whereas an area that for a number of years has worked as an industrial area still has some capacity, albeit not quite as much as it has been, for that to still exist in Shrub Hill.
Yeah, and I think we need to look at that across the whole of the Shrub Hill industrial estate. So when you in the supplementary planning document, Shrub Hill is residential led. There's a lot of new housing within those plans for Shrub Hill. Shrub Hill Industrial Estate, which is the part that the County Council owns, is where most of the commercial space currently sits. So, we have other spaces within the Shrub Hill Industrial Estate, as we talked about, on that upper yard side as well. And I think it's it's a mix of uses that support the market, and those, the majority of those units that are in good order are taken up because there is demand for those spaces at the moment.
Councillor Crosty, yeah.
Thank you. Paragraph 13, the changes within the Procurement Act. I'd like to understand better how the risk becomes different for contractor or council, and what the key thresholds are for complexity from a contractor perspective. So part of that is, what contract value thresholds there are, and relating to the refurbishment of Isaac Maddox House, what figure we had in mind for that refurbishment element, having already separated out the strip out. Thank you.
So the refurbishment of Isaac Maddox House is sits outside of the procurement for a development partner. That's already been procured. We've already been to tender for that. The Towns Fund grant allocated to the refurbishment of Isaac Maddox House is £7.25 million. When we go out to tender for a development partner for the rest of Shrub Hill, we'll clearly need to work very closely with them about how the redevelopment of the rest of the lower yard, where Isaac Maddox House sits, is sympathetic to what's happening in Isaac Maddox House, because clearly you're going to have potential for common access points. There will be new housing built at the rear of that office site, so it can complement very well, and certainly there's lots of description within the supplementary planning document about how that creates a new community, a new area, a new vibrancy to have both the residential and the office and those all working together down there. So I think it's really important for us to work with whoever the developer is for the residential part on how that sits alongside Isaac Maddox House. In terms of the Procurement Act, what this will allow us to do is be more flexible in those discussions with developers about, if you like, what their interests, what their priorities are in that redevelopment. So, we have presented, potentially whether they're interested in working with us on Isaac Maddox House at all or not. Instead of deciding that ahead of the procurement, we can have a discussion with them about how much they want to support that development, and what the nature of that is. The same with other parts of the estate, like the engine works, which we know, is our Grade 2 listed building, and some developers will be very interested in heritage development, others will not be. And rather than trying to determine that up front now, we can work with them through that dialogue process to understand how much they want to support some of those quite different parts of Shrub Hill. And therefore, hopefully, we will then find the right partner to deliver the bits that we need a third party to deliver, and be much clearer then what we're delivering ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Amar.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to ask you, have you consulted businesses about the fit out or what they would like to see? As a small business owner, I always prefer serviced offices. You could, if you want flexibility, you get students or temporary employees, then you can get hot desking. It's really trendy. It's really, you know, it's attractive. It attracts young people, entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. So have they been consulted, and is that sort of part of the vision?
Yeah, we've consulted local agents, and I think the design of the building allows for that. We expect some of those spaces to be broken up into smaller units that would need. Yeah.
What I mean is, for example, if you went to WeWork Birmingham, beautiful building, absolutely amazing. They've taken 2 whole floors and they did whatever they wanted with it. They've got the relaxation area, they've got the, you know, little booths that you can speak in. So is that something that's been part of the, you know, fact-finding plan of how to attract small businesses and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, very much so, in terms of, I suppose, what we're trying to do is make the building so it can flex to those kind of business needs. Some businesses very much like the kind of Google Office environment, some like the kind of traditional, so the building can break down into those various sizes, and we're trying to keep that flexibility so that, yeah, you can have those things, and there's a bit of, again, joint workspace that is built into that at the moment. But to some extent, the advantage of the building being the size it is, means that you can be flexible to those business needs. So all those kind of things that you're referencing will sort of, yeah, be able to, the building will be able to accommodate those.
Councillor Edmund.
Thank you. Well, it seems quite a convoluted thing we've got here. Certainly when I read through this, it wasn't until I got to 13 I realised the dice had been thrown up in the air, basically there. A number of questions have been asked by colleagues here, which have shed some light on that, but I must be a simple soul. I would love to see a time plan and work done and work to be done presented, really, to show where we are as a snapshot. I don't know whether other people feel that way. That's the way I'm looking at it at the moment. You've given very detailed explanations, as you can, to some quite complicated questions, I think, that require detail. But I would like to see that in paper, really, from my point of view. Thank you.
Yes, we could do that. I think we did a timeline last time, so perhaps updating that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any other question? Councillor Allen.
Yeah, it was just really to check, Chair, going forward, that we were going to request some actions, if that's okay.
We haven't got there yet. I'm still on questions, but we will do it 16 when we get there. If there's no other questions or comments, then no, silence is acquiescence. Then 16, the panel is asked to consider and comment on the information, agree any comments to the CMR, and determine any future information. So I've made a note that we want to know what the cost of the tender process is hitherto. Yeah. And is there any other actions or comments anybody, Councillor Price, would like to request?
I just wanted a breakdown of what was spent from the grants so far and what's left of them.
Yeah, okay, so breakdown of what we spent on the grant so far and what's left, and I think it'd be helpful just to clarify exactly by what time they all have to be spent by, cost of the tender process and...
Well, there were 2 others. Your excellent idea of having a timeline on paper, I think that's a really good idea. And then the actual cost to the site that we're maintaining, how much is it costing us, either yearly or monthly, to keep it ticking over?
Okay, so income in terms of all of the rents that we're getting versus expenditure in terms of any costs, and therefore whether it's a net or a...
No, well, I think they've already said in that case it balances out.
Yeah.
What I really want is that figure of how much is it costing going out.
Yeah.
I mean, that rent coming in is just money for the county council, effectively. If it's costing us £1,000 a month or £10,000 a month, I think it's important this committee
Sure, but
knows.
you've got to balance the two, haven't you? You can't. You need to know what the income is, and then versus the expenditure, don't you? And then what your net, whether you've got a net surplus or a net cost. You've got to have both. Okay, right, I think that's 4 things there, so Sam will have made a note. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Penny. You're free to go if you so wish. And I assume you're going to stay, Gary, for the second item. Good. Okay, let's hand over to Sarah, Dave and Louisa for item 2, the performance monitoring accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. The performance report that starts on page 7 of the printed pack, as usual, I'll put the usual extra bit at the start that it's backed up by a Power BI version of the report, and that shows the same information but in a different format, and that's available on the our performance website page of the County Council, along with reports for a couple of the other panels and also audit and governance risk report as well. And this one, it covers information up to the end of the second quarter of the financial year. So we're looking at the end of September. Now, in truth, there are some updates which I was anticipating, based on previous years, that we would have. So, for example, we had last year, at the last meeting, we were able to look at refreshed information about the business demography for the county, so the different kinds of how many businesses there are in different sectors, but also the size bands as well of those. There's another related data set there, which is the business survival rates, which has come before the panel for many years now, and it's updated once a year. Last year it was updated just around this time. But at the moment, the ONS website says the next refresh is to be announced. So I've just checked it this morning. It would have been ironic if it had been released, but it hasn't. So I'll keep an eye out on that, and we'll get an update for you on that. And the other one that hasn't been updated, again, it's usually around this time, is around the rail station usage figures from Office for Rail and Road. Last year, that came out, I think it was around mid-November. It's now scheduled for definite, that one. We've got a date, which is the 4th of December. So those figures will be for the rail station usage in 24/5 financial year. But whether there are updates, there's a couple of quarterly updates that are worth looking at, and one of course is for the adults in employment, and there's a graph I think that's on that goes into, I think it's after the business survival rates one. It's on I think it's page 10, yes, of the report, and the information there, it's updated each quarter based on the data set from NOMIS, Office for National Statistics. Now with that one, what we would like to see always is that Worcestershire's percentage of 16 to 64s that are in employment is higher than the England rate, and it remains so. There's a gap, a percentage point gap between the two percentages has dropped, but Worcestershire's figure at the end of the last quarter, 77.54 in employment, pretty much unchanged, 78% at the end of June. The September 2024 figure was very high. It's one of the highest ones for Worcestershire. So it was 81.75. So we've had a bigger fall back over the year, rather than the England percentage has stayed very static. It was 75.7 at the end of both September and June, and at the end of September last year it was 75.6. But our figure is still, in percentage point difference, it's 1.84% higher. But as you might imagine, the figure at the end of September last year for us meant the percentage point gap was just in excess of 6, so it has narrowed. But in terms of the general theme, I think a lot of it, the figures that we're seeing are very much sort of the seasonal ones. There'd be other factors sometimes that come into play locally that would show up, but certainly the September figure, by and large, it's in keeping with many of the previous years. Obviously, accepting the one from September last year. The graph that's underneath, rather than jumping a bit further through the report, but the graph underneath on the gigabit broadband coverage, of course the panel had an update, the usual very detailed update from Steve Ashton at the last meeting last month, and just backing up really a couple of Steve's points. The one, we've moved away from looking at the superfast broadband percentage, because any rise now, it's going to be very incremental. So to put that into perspective, the Worcestershire superfast figure at the end of premises, both commercial and residential that were passed and able to connect to superfast was 98.79%. It's going to sound very precise now. At the end of June, it was 98.78%. So it's that sort of, we're getting to that stage of the programme now. In September last year, 98.6%. But our figure in that respect is above the England and UK figures. The UK figure at the end of September was 98.39%. More importantly, in terms of the graph, the gigabit update, for that one, our figure remains just a little bit below the UK figure, 86.4% of premises that are passed and able to connect to gigabit, and it's 88.8% for the UK. The percentage point gap is remained the same from the end of June. Ours is 2.4 percentage points lower. It's widened ever so slightly from the end of September last year, when our figure was 1.9 percentage points lower. So it's just a little widening of the gap. But again, we're getting to a point now where we want to push on, of course, with the programme, but the rises each month will be getting less and less, both locally and nationally. And on a related theme, I think Steve mentioned it in the report last time about the government spending review, and as part of the project Gigabit sort of being carried on and extended, part of that was that the desire to move to 99% coverage has gone back from 2030, which was the government's original target, to 2032. So in that sense, of course, we still want to get ahead of the game and get as close to that as we can before that. And also, and Gary will be aware of this, but in the corporate performance and risk monitoring system that we've got internally, Steve's actually suggested that we start to use other Think Broadband figures which focus on the other end of the scale. And that's about premises, again, residential and business, that are unable to connect to at least 10 megabits per second. And I think broadly speaking, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was agreement that if people haven't got access to that level of internet connectivity, then they're able to sort of request that I think it's the universal service obligation. That's how I just jotted it down. They can request an upgrade. So obviously we would want our figure in that respect to be very low in the county, as would the national figure. So what we're going to do is use the Think Broadband figures there and monitor how well we're doing in that regard. Worcestershire's figure is well below the national level, which is what we want to see, of course. It's 0.46% of premises across the county can't connect to 10 megabits per second. The England figure is about 1%. So they're all very low figures, but ideally we'd want it to be as close to zero as possible, of course. So we'll monitor that. It's at the moment, the indicator's just got a couple of quarters worth of data in it, and we can keep monitoring that going forward. The only other thing, Chair, really was just to focus on where there has been another update, which was really around the claimant count information. And there's the usual group of tables for each of the districts that starts on, I think it's page 20 of the pack. And it goes through, of course, and gives breakdowns by age bands for each of the districts. And as a very broad brush, but the June to September comparisons, Worcester City, Wyre Forest and Bromsgrove, their end of September figures, their overall claimant count totals were higher than their end of June ones, but for the other three districts they were down. But across the piece, if we're looking year on year, at the end of September, the claimant count across the county, all the districts, was 11,030, and that's just a shade under 9% lower than the figure at the end of September last year, and that was 12,105. So generally speaking, down. I would just say that, again, I think it was something that Gary referenced in the last meeting. Within that, there are just a couple of the age groups where the figure has gone up in the last year, and they were both at the lower end. ONS provides a split for 16 and 17-year-olds. That's gone up. End of September last year, there were 25 claimants, 35 at the end of September this year. And in the 18 to 24 range, the figure there, it was 2,090 at the end of September last year, and we've gone up by 5% to 2,195 at the end of September this year. The biggest drop was in respect to the 45 to 49 age range, where the claimant count there has gone down quite markedly. It's 21.2% down. It was 1,225 at the end of September last year, down to 965 at the end of September this year. But that's the other updates, as I say, hopefully we'll have a bit more in terms of other refreshes around the business survival rates later on, and also around the station usage. I'm happy to, hopefully that's given a good overview. Happy to pick up any queries or defer to Gary, of course, where need be.
Thank you very much indeed. Happy to take questions and comments. Shall we go through page by page? That'll probably be very helpful then, and then we can do it systematically. So anybody like to make a comment on or question on page 8 on Worcestershire Business Enterprises or Micro Business Enterprises at all? Or indeed page 9 on business survival rates, because they're all sort of lumped together. So, Councillor Amar.
Yes, thank you very much for that report. I don't know if you have any background information about the non-trading companies in Bromsgrove. At some point we were called the startup capital of the country, but of course it was a lot of accountants that created off-the-shelf organisations that, you know, entrepreneurs and what have you. So I'm wondering if this figure, the 19.3, has been impacted by that practice. Yes. It has. So, yeah, can you talk to me? Because that's what I thought when I saw that figure. Can you please elaborate?
It is a long-standing skewing in the figure where those, as you say, those short-term registrations of businesses, and they might be for a very short time, but the Office of National Statistics data set doesn't make any allowance for that. There's no attempt to actually either take them out of the equation. I suppose they want the completeness of the set of data, but it does sort of skew it, and they will centre point as well on Bromsgrove. They will use postcode data, which invariably will centre on one particular area for each of the districts. So it does effectively mean that, you know, Bromsgrove in that regard becomes a centre for a lot of those registrations. So they went very quickly in and out of existence. The only thing that we would say is that eventually, depending on how far we go back with the next set of business survival rates data, we could retain that information in there, but it would drop out really, because we'd have another set of annual data to go in. But it is I would say it's a weakness of the data set really, in terms of the way that there isn't any allowance made by ONS for that. And there are other districts across the country where that's happened as well. But for us, it's most pronounced with Bromsgrove.
I'm wondering if the Companies House number changes every time that a new... Because if we look at the Companies House, for example, data, we might be able to in Worcestershire at least say this number of companies came in and out, and that way we start to get an idea of our survival rate, because at the moment that for us in Bromsgrove, that chart unfortunately doesn't mean anything at all. Thank you.
I think from that side of things, we've tried to do our best that, you know, you see the number of registrations, you see the number of deregistrations, so you can do a bit instead of going too far into Companies House. That would bring kind of Bromsgrove back into line with the kind of Worcestershire average is our sort of assessment of where we're at. So, yeah, I think for the purpose of this, we're reporting the ONS figures, which we should, but as Dave indicated, I think as we get new data sets, I think gradually we'll drop those bits off. So what you'll then see is Bromsgrove comes far more in line with the Worcestershire average.
So some work has already been done on that, and I'm wondering if we go into the next report, would we be able to see a graph of a best estimate, let's say, for Bromsgrove, so at least we're sort of seeing, would you be comfortable and confident in giving us a an estimate of where we are in Bromsgrove because of this data. I mean, you know, to be fair, it's a practice that's being done in Bromsgrove, so I don't blame the data, but it's.
I mean, we need to make sure that there is because you've got to compare apples with apples, haven't you?
Yeah.
And if you're doing what you do for Bromsgrove, then you have to do it for the other 5 districts as well.
But they don't have the same.
No, I get
Yeah.
that, but we can't just have a different data set measure for Bromsgrove over anybody else, can we? Because then we're not comparing apples with apples.
So my understanding is a comparison's already been made for Bromsgrove because of this practice. It would be nice for us to see
Sure,
it.
but we need data that's consistent across the county. Now, I think we've got a very clear answer in response as to why the reason is the reason. And I think what Gary is saying, over time, then we'll see an equalisation. I think Gary's saying that there's been a deeper dive done into Bromsgrove, which actually brings it in consistent. But if we're going to bring different data to the next meeting, it has to be consistent across the county. We can't just pick out Bromsgrove over any other district.
Yeah, it is difficult because you are. What happens when there is a company that does register or has been going for ages and then deregisters? Are you counting that in or not? So we've done an assessment that kind of says, actually, we think the number of registrations and the number of deregistrations would bring Worcestershire up to the average. I think putting some real hard numbers on it, I'd be a little bit nervous because then we're then starting to, we're distorting the numbers to suit our ends.
Chair, and just as a follow-up, very backing up really, as Gary said, and I mentioned about the data dropping off each year as we go. The next set of data that will come out, I would envisage that we'd see Bromsgrove looking very much like, for example, the first graph on the top of page 9, where it's looking at the businesses started in 2022 and still trading 1 year later. Then the next graph we'll have the next set of data will obviously look at those and say how were they still trading in 2024, and so it will go on. Now, for example, that graph shows Bromsgrove, of course, much more in keeping with the county levels, because it's using Gary's analogy, it is the case we're comparing like with like. So I'd feel much more comfortable when we've got another data release, we'll have another year further on, and we'll be able to add that into the mix and show that for you.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Councillor Price.
Sorry, just to add, I think myself and Councillor Bales raised this in a few meetings ago regarding Bromsgrove, and I think the answers that were provided at the time were sufficient. I think just to reinforce what Dave's just said, I think as this report goes along in time, we should naturally see those numbers start to rise anyway, because 2022 is a bit of a one-off, where you probably had loads of accountants creating businesses in Bromsgrove for other reasons, which I won't go into. But I think from my perspective, I think we've probably answered these questions already as a panel in previous meetings. Thank you.
Yeah, probably one point I'd add is, I know we're talking about 2020, 2022, 2024. That is the most recent data, and obviously until we get the data release. So they are also a bit of a rear view mirror data set. They're not, if somebody said how many businesses have started this year, it's actually really hard to get that data. So I know there might be some uncomfortableness of why we're going back to 2020, thinking of the pandemic and all those kind of things. But that is the most recent data that we're working off as well, just for clarity.
Okay, good. Any more questions on 8 or 9? No. In which case, let's move on to anybody got anything on 10 working age adults in employment? Councillor Marr?
I'm a little concerned with this, actually. I'm slightly concerned because when I look at the graph from December 24 to September 25, it's literally a graph plummeting downwards. I don't know what your thoughts are on how we can hopefully rescue the situation so we don't keep going down. Thank you.
I think it's a pattern of the macroeconomy where we are seeing less working adults in employment. Inactivity, there was a good document recently which was the Get Worcestershire Working Plan, which came to Council or Cabinet, I can't remember now. Cabinet, go on. That really also delved really into that inactivity. Some of it is retirement, some of it is students. But actually, there is also some areas that we have got either national schemes or money that we are looking to kind of work with those people to open up employment opportunities, particularly those with health needs, and equally, again, without pointing the panel towards something else, but obviously youth unemployment is also rising in this, and I think that is something we should be concerned about in relation to our kind of local area and the job opportunities that we've got. So I kind of share with Councillor Marr's concerns that the graph looks like that. I think obviously digging behind it might be an area that the committee want to look at.
Yeah, Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. I think, it's a very interesting graph, and, to take Gary's points, youth unemployment, a massive indicator. So I've got a few questions. I think the first one regarding youth unemployment, which I'd probably like to bring Alan in on this one as a cabinet member, is his views on it, what his priorities are, and what he thinks probably our big bets are to try and tackle youth unemployment, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I certainly share a concern of others about youth unemployment. It is obviously a bigger national picture. But doing what we can in Worcestershire, obviously we're limited. But I would draw attention to a couple of things that we are, to some extent, in control of. First of all, the careers advice available to young people. We are now, Worcestershire now is the top rated, I repeat that, careers advice service in the country. So the advice is there, the quality of the staff are there. Also, something that I've been pushing ever since I took on this role is apprenticeships. I was at the awards last Thursday. It was Thursday. Gary made a brilliant speech. I made an even better one. But there, it was fascinating to see so many people. Maximum number of people could get in the hall, the awards. It was a really happy evening because it was an evening of success and achievement. Our apprenticeship programs, getting people into work, all the programs that we are in control of, for example, skilling, upskilling, reskilling, small and medium enterprises, all those, we have a whole array of programs to deal with that. They're very focused on this. So this is why these figures are a source of concern. If you want my own view, which I've expressed before, is that I think we're far too soft on people claiming to have medical conditions which they don't have. And because they don't have medical conditions, there's no solution to them. And I think we've really got to get beyond this idea that people can live off welfare, because it is not sustainable. The figure that came out last week said an extra million, which is now 4 million people, are living on welfare but don't have to look for work. If you start life like that as a young person, it's very difficult to undo that. So the emphasis must be through the career service. And of course, many youngsters have different needs and requirements. But we cater for that. This is the important point. I'm not talking about just going to school, getting some O-levels, GCSEs, A-levels and so on, and then hoping you get a university place. Our needs, their needs are much greater, and we provide that. So the reason I'm keen to push apprenticeships is because this is a very, very exciting way of getting into a job, getting into work, because the apprenticeships are specifically designed. I've been to a number of visits around the county now, seeing how this works, seeing the young people. They don't have to be young people, they mainly are young people, actually carrying out work while we're standing watching them. It's exciting because a school, a typical academic environment may not be suitable for them. But there they are, all busy doing things that I can't even hope to understand. And they are the youngsters of the future. And there's a lot of it going on. So that's what we are in control of. That's what we have the resources to do, and we're pressing ahead with that. So I think that's the answer, Worcestershire. But I think within the macro context, we've got to get away from a system which seems to take at face value, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, so therefore I don't go to work. Because once you're in that system, you won't get out of it.
very profound, Councillor Ramos. I don't quarrel with any of it. Help me with this from someone who's been to more apprenticeship wards than I can remember. Who was the guest speaker and compare?
Shazia Muria, sorry. Mirza, sorry. So she was our host. As you know, we generally have somebody who can both hold the awards together and entertain the audience. She did both very well.
Showing my ignorance as to who she is, because
comedian, entertainer, and
there you are. I'm out of touch because we've had people like Angelica Bell and Steph McGovern and Nick Hewer do it over the years. So
yeah, we've had a fantastic array of hosts.
Good.
And they've, as per usual, held up to a high standard where the audience enjoyed the event, and also the winners I'd like to congratulate, but also the finalists.
good, and it's quite an inspiration to show that what goes on across the county, and is it with all the small, medium, and large employers out there, and all the enthusiasm across a vast array of companies across Worcestershire. So it's always a really good event. So good.
Thank you for those comments, Chair, because you're absolutely right. And this year it was the biggest we've had, the most successful we've had. So this is growing. So what I want to, I don't want to be pessimistic, but there is the optimism is that the resource, the potential is there. With our help and with the youngsters having the right attitude, the potential is there to get these figures much better than they are. We don't have to be looking at declining figures. But I say it's going to take a bit of guts from a number of organisations to say, no, you're capable of work, find work. You're not going on welfare. And that's really the job for the government, any government.
I just find, and as troubling as that table is, I just think it's, synonymous with the current state of the economy and the general view of businesses out there. Any other comments or questions on that? Councillor Price, then Councillor Amar.
Thank you. I think amazing work with the apprenticeships, and I saw the news articles last week, and it's a testament to the work that you're doing. So thank you on that one, and I look forward to the next few years for apprenticeships. I think one of my other questions, which I'll probably direct towards more Dave to begin with, and then Gary, in terms of the chart here, I think it gives an indication that employment is declining, but you'll have clear winners and losers within that in certain sectors. So do we have a grasp of which sectors are doing well, which ones are not doing so well, and where the ones are doing very well? What support can we give as a local authority to those businesses? Thank you.
The data that this is taken from wouldn't give that sort of level of information, I don't think. But I don't know whether, Gary, is there any...
There is if you look at the employment dashboard, there is the workplace jobs. It's not brilliantly clear, but that's just because, so you can start to see a difference in terms of where people are working in the county and in which sectors. I think in terms of the business support, Worcestershire is has quite a varied business base in terms of, we've not got one major employer that really sucks in a load of labour. We're not that kind of area. So we've got lots in quite a wide spread of sectors. I think that's really helpful for a place like ours in terms of if construction, often goes in feast and famine in terms of its economic output. Sometimes when those sectors are actually struggling, it means that something else is doing very well. But I wouldn't want to necessarily put my chips on the table and say, I'm going to back one sector over another going longer term, because I think those cycles come out. I think our role in terms of local government as a kind of place-based plan and probably our training providers, both public and private, our role is to provide good quality young people and adults that can then have a really good building block and foundation. The companies themselves will deliver those specialist skills. So lots will be made about AI at the moment, but if there's good digital skills coming out of school, sixth form, FE, universities, and in the workplace, actually the employers will train those specific AI skills themselves. So I think that would be our role, is not given that kind of varied sector. our role is to kind of provide people who've got good building blocks. So I'm probably more concerned actually by the chart below, which says employers are still having difficulty to recruit, because it shows there's still jobs out there, but we've got to make sure that the people have got the skills to take those jobs.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome apprenticeship programmes and career advice. However, when I just went online and everything is Worcester-centric. So if you are a young person that seeks career advice between the age of 15 and 24, you have to go to the Hive. That's quite away from Bromsgrove. It's not clear to me if there's any outposts across the Shire that could help young people who don't live in Worcester. So that's one comment I'd like noted. The other thing is with the apprenticeship programs, obviously there are different partners. Can you tell me how many partners there are, please? Too many.
Okay, first question first. So our youth hubs, we have physical youth hubs in both Worcester at the Hive, you're right, but also Redditch at Howe College and Kidderminster, working with Kidderminster College. But also all our schools, all our educational establishments, we deliver all the careers advice through those. So again, if they're engaged in those, and therefore the youth hubs pick up those who are not engaged, and you can access that service wherever you are. We are looking at other physical locations in Bromsgrove and obviously Malvern and Wychavon. In terms of the numbers of partners involved in apprenticeships, it's a huge number. We work particularly with the Worcestershire Training Providers Association, so that would include our FE colleges that we would probably recognise, our university, but also private sector training providers. There's probably about 30 to 40 in that network, and those are the ones that are Worcestershire based, obviously because we're not an island and we look north, south, east and west. Other providers that are outside the area come in and deliver as well, so it's quite difficult to put a total number on it. Then you've got organisations like the Chamber, the Federation of Small Businesses, the NFU. One of our jobs is to coordinate all those with the businesses, with obviously parents and carers and guardians are also a factor in this, teachers, schools, and we bring those all together under that Worcestershire Apprenticeships banner to really work together behind one kind of message, instead of lots of people trying to have lots of different conversations about their own specialism. So the careers advice that goes in terms of Worcestershire Apprenticeships is an umbrella that makes it coordinated, and we probably see about 30,000 young people each year, which of course is an ongoing task on the basis of each school year. There's another set of young people coming through the system. So it is something that we value very much in the way that we've got that set up. And I would probably add, sometimes in Worcestershire we take those things for granted, that we've got this all under one umbrella, because I can identify other parts of the country where it's not, and it doesn't work as well. So, it's difficult to put a number on it, but because it's quite large, but we do try and operate in a way that's coordinated and coordinates the marketing message.
One of the issues that I have is that, and I know there's a funding issue because I've looked into this when I became a district councillor, but we have many people, young and maybe middle-aged, who decide to open a business. If you're very good at cooking, it doesn't mean that you are very good at business. And I always wondered if we, as a local authority, could have the expertise to have somebody where, when a person wants to open a business, they can go to them and then they can tell them all the things that might be involved. As a marketeer, I often, I don't work with small business, or I tried it, but I stopped doing it. I only work with large business because many people do open a business and they don't realise just because you open a business, the customer isn't going to come flocking to you. You're going to go and have to invest quite a bit of money and effort and time to attract them to you. So it's sort of like the feasibility and how much money is required in investment, because it does depress people when they have to close again in a few months, and it depresses young people. They feel hopeless. So this is one of the services that I wish we would be able to have, that a person who's there to help them with the feasibility, a simple feasibility study.
So I think the question is, do we give business advice?
Well, for startups specifically,
Yeah.
we don't in Bromsgrove.
Okay, we've got the point.
So yes, we have a county-wide programme where we work with our district council partners, so that, again, coordination really important. We do a pre-start programme, we do an enterprise programme, so the difference is pre-start, I haven't started yet, but I'm really good at cooking, as you say, and this is, your analogy was exactly right. Lots of people are really good at hobbies or something else, but turning it into a business is another challenge. So we do give advice on that basis. Also, once they've started, because obviously some people miss that stage out and just start anyway. So there is a startup program that goes from 0 to 3 years, so it is that first 3 years. And also, the way the business support program has changed probably over the last few years is we also provide coaching. So if you don't want to go through the kind of workshop and the half-day program, all-day program, and you think, oh, I know what I'm doing, but actually I could do with somebody sat alongside me helping, then actually we provide that information, advice and guidance with a business advisor free of charge for up to 10 hours, so not forever. And then obviously they can then go out to the market and find a sort of business coach. So that support exists today, and our view is that we're looking to continue that support beyond the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, that, as we're sat here today, the bit that funds it, we don't know whether that funding is going to be available beyond March this financial year, but we are working hard through the budget process to secure that, so we can keep that business support out there and free at the point of use, because I think particularly given our stats and given the results, that free business support for that stage of business is really important.
Good. I think that's helpful, Gary.
Where do I refer people to, please?
County-wide, and there is information on the County Council website, but I'll send you a link beforehand.
Add, Chair, if I may, on that. I think Councillor Amar's raised a very, very good point. The Growth Hub, what I call loosely a one-stop shop for everything. Advice, assistance, grants, really helping anybody come along, start up, and then not just start up, but carrying on in that business to make it a success. We've talked earlier about skilling, upskilling, reskilling, because after about 3 years, that seems to be a time at which businesses want to do something different, but they don't know how to do something different. And that's when firms, I think, often collapse because they can't expand and get bigger. But there's an awful lot of information. Perhaps I could ask Gary without wishing to overburden him. We have a load of schemes on this because this is central to our business support programme that we are running, that we are very keen to support and maintain throughout any budget cuts there may be. This is the essence of our work. So thank you for raising that. Gary will provide you with more information, because there's a lot of it and it's all good news, I can promise you.
Good. I think that deals with 10 and 11. Would anybody like to ask any questions on the dashboard at all? Councillor Cross.
Thank you. Whereabouts could we see more detailed graphs or sort of clearer pictures? It's just a bit hard to see and drill down. Thank you.
Yeah, an electronic copy, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So even on Power BI, it's just sort of one screenshot, effectively, of several graphs, and it's not terribly clear. So it would help with visibility, please.
Just so I'm clear, what are you asking for? Yeah, I know that. What are you asking for? Sorry, Councillor Cross, so that I'm clear.
Is it possible for us to see, for example, within the apprenticeships graph, so 1 of 9 on the page, if we want to see that one in particular, if you zoom in on the screen, it just goes fuzzy. So just if that functionality were available, that'd be great.
We'll ask Dave. Okay, that's clear. Dave.
That's fine. Yeah, we can get a more clear version. I think it loses a little bit in the various the way I probably put it into the original document and then being produced online. And certainly all we did for the Power BI was basically to use the screenshots to go in there. Actually, with the Power BI, I think it would be possible to use some of the data that we've got to be able to create more interactive graphs and have a look at that. But in the first instance, we can get a clearer version of this for you.
Thank you. Good. Any other questions on the dashboard? No. Well, we've got a huge amount of data on businesses, enterprises by employment size bands and broad industry, survival rates, etc. So happy to take any questions or comments on any of the data there.
Sorry, Chair. Is
Yeah.
it just up to page 13 that you want to take questions or beyond?
I thought we'd do the businesses first before then going on to employment and claimants. So let's do anything on businesses first of all, from page 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 and 18. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Chair. On the, I think, page 14. Yeah, page 14. So I'm just looking at the business enterprise by broad industry group. We've got accommodation and food services. I suspect that's not up to us, that's ONS. We don't know, when looking at that, I don't know whether I doubt that we've had hotels closed down. So I think it's probably pubs and restaurants that have declined or indeed have gone up in number. So is there a way to know what is accommodation and what is a restaurant, cafe, pub? And the other thing that is missing, which I just want it on record, it might not be up to us, but it's tourism. So we're not giving tourism its own sort of numbers.
Yeah, I think tourism, I think, comes under the very broad brush that ONS have got for arts, entertainment, recreation and other services, I think. But I don't think it would be possible from their data set to look at the information specifically around the difference between the hotels and pubs. I can go away and just double check, but certainly the actual data release doesn't go into that data, but there might be something behind that might be able to get a bit more information on. So I can go away and check that. That's fine. Casey.
And there's no way to know arrivals, sort of like 1 day, 2 day tourism to Worcestershire. We've got Visit Worcestershire, but there's no way or any way to know how many people come to Worcestershire on tourism, or there is, yeah. But it's not on here,
the tourism team, and unfortunately we did tourism at the last meeting, but again, I'm quite happy to put the team in touch for if you want some specifics, but we do monitor overnight stays and number of day visitors, so those are 2 figures that we would have.
Good. Any more questions? Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Looking at page 15, Malvern Hills, it just sort of strikes me that for most of the listings there, from 21 to 2025, there's not really been any growth, has there? It's not in every single case, but if you look at finance and insurance, health, which I assume is dentists and physiotherapists and things like that, and then arts, entertainment, recreation, and other services. I mean, it's stagnant, isn't it? There's no growth, and if we don't have growth, there can't be more employment. And we've just been talking about young people getting jobs. Well, we have quite a lot of young people in Malvern and the surrounding villages, and I'm wondering where their jobs are going to come from.
Well, I think we're reflective of the national picture. Remember, these are numbers. These are number of business counts, and obviously, so yeah, we can pick a line. That property company, yeah, there might be one. Those can employ 5 people or 10 people or however. So, the growth comes in the employment numbers in each sector as well. So, but you're right. Yeah, the numbers of businesses at the moment is pretty flat, given the kind of macro position. That's probably not surprising.
I mean, I suppose when I looked at it, Councillor Allen, on the one hand, one perhaps ought to rejoice at Malvern Hills, because if you look at some of the other districts, there's substantial decline.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think Malvern's probably in a better place than some of the other districts when you study the data. Good. Anybody else? Any comments or questions? Well, anything on business survival rates then on page 17? Or employment working age adults? We'll take anything on 17, 18, 19 and 20, 20 to the rest of the document. Business survival rates, employment working age adults, and there's a lot of information on claimant counts, particularly by district. No? Okay. Silence is acquiescence then, in which case thank you very much indeed. That will take us to our final item, and by no means least, which is the work programme, just to confirm. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Sarah, sorry. It's because I kind of, because this is, this is a supplementary. Well, this is the overall council's financial position, are there any, questions specifically on the finance at all? Page 11, which is specific to our economy panel, I should say. Sorry, Sarah. Do you want to go first and say anything, or happy just for questions?
It's up to you, Chair, really. I can do a quick run through with the pertinent points, or just happy to take questions if people have
I think, sorry, we're just, anybody got any specific questions relevant to our economy panel, which start on page 11? Obviously, this is showing the financial position after period 6, quarter 2. Obviously, we've got pages 12, 13, 14 and 15. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions relating to page 13. I think the good news is we've got some underspends. So I think the interesting thing that I wanted to understand is what's driving those underspends within each area.
So overall, there are some areas where we have got sort of underspends due to volume as opposed to price. So within waste management, we're looking at an underspend there because, and it's very contrary, we've fallen into the higher tonnage bracket, so that reduces the price per tonne that we pay for waste. I will caveat that with saying the latest sort of figures that are coming through is that the waste volume is falling, so we may slip below and into the higher charge tonnage bracket. Within road lighting, this is just a residual saving from the LED swap out. So there was a big sort of 2-3 year process of swapping out the LED lights on street lighting, which has created was an excellent project and has created an ongoing saving. Some of the other areas, there are small savings around sort of just, you know, the normal day-to-day running of a small area. Vacancies, we're starting to see the fact that people aren't filling vacancies now, and those are starting to fall out within some of the areas. So where there is a vacant position where somebody has left, in the forecasting we would have assumed that we would appoint at some point. So we may say if somebody wasn't in post in April, we'd say we probably would appoint in September. Those are slipping now. Obviously there's more scrutiny on whether those posts are needed. Most people would say the posts are needed, but people are trying to manage without that staffing level, and that is creating. Obviously, within the budgets, we do have a vacancy forecast, so that we forecast that there will be vacant positions, but we're overachieving on that now in a number of areas where they are holding posts. We have had some new grants in year that have supported some areas, so we've been able to use grant funding instead of revenue-based funding, and we obviously try and maximise that wherever we can. And large BSIP grants into bus, which has allowed them to expand, and the DRT and those things are being supported. We have got some savings in home to school transport. It's not necessarily this area. That's just around price again. So that's some retendering going on there. So there's nothing huge that I can point to and say that's a saving. We are coming obviously into winter season now, so depending on how much storm and how much flood damage we get, we may see some of the forecasts increase, certainly in highways areas where we're having to send people out to, you know, clear roads and support flooding areas. There's a small assumption of some storm damage in the forecast, but it, you know, obviously we're at, you know, the mercy of the elements. Yeah, and that's with the winter maintenance. We've included a number of gritting rounds. If those gritting rounds, we have to do more because the weather is hopefully not poor, then that forecast will go up.
Good. Another question, Councillor Price? Yeah,
Yes,
and then
thank
Councillor
you.
Cross, then Councillor.
I just want to touch on one of the overspend areas, which is cost of vehicle maintenance. Is that due to maintain our existing fleet, or is the fleet coming to the end of its contracted life and we're looking to retender? What's the nuances behind it?
So vehicle maintenance, the majority of that is end-of-life fleet activity. We are seeing some quite high costs within gritters as well. So obviously trying to be able to replace a gritter is a huge capital investment, and there's a big timeline. You know, you can order a gritter now and you're looking sort of 18 months down the line when that gritter's going to turn up. The vehicle maintenance contract is coming to end as well, so that there will be some activity around that going forward.
Councillor Cross.
Chair, I may be slightly premature. I've got a question relating to page 14.
That's fine.
Yep, okay. So actually two questions really. One is about the increase, the 20% increase compared to last September of children within the HCP. Is that because the number of children needing HCPs has risen, or because we're better at processing a backlog? And also, is there a national increase, or are we better at seeing the issue and addressing the issue? And the second point is about our homeschool transport. There's an expectation that this is going to increase similarly dramatically, and just wondering how we can address that, what plans we already have. Thank you.
So homeschool transport, that will be discussed by Children and Families Scrutiny, so the details around that. What I would say about EHCPs is it's a national phenomena, if you like, the increase, and it's very tightly linked to obviously the overspend that we've got on the high needs block. There are more children with EHCPs that need to be transported and educated, and obviously the education places are slimmer, so the transport is longer, trying to get those children to the most appropriate setting for them. I can't comment on whether there was a backlog within the service area. That's not for me to comment. But in general, there is it's increasing.
Thank you. And then the funding that we're getting from government is not increasing in line with the increased need.
No way.
I wouldn't like to comment on national policy, but it's not sufficient for Worcestershire to yeah.
Councillor Allen. Sorry, Alan.
Sorry to interrupt you. I would say hopelessly inadequate is the answer to that honest question.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah, I don't quarrel with that at all. Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Looking at page 12, waste management, does that include the forthcoming food waste collection?
That is in the next financial year, I understand, food waste. And collection will be with the districts. So this, the waste that you're seeing here is the disposal element. So yeah, the team are working on where that will be disposed, but hoping that will be cost neutral.
Okay, thank you, because that's what I was on about. I know the district collect, but we have to dispose of. So I was just wondering whether or not you know the figures were there or not, but obviously not. So next time we see this, they should be there, I would have thought. But moving on to the following page, highways operation. Overspend due to pressures relating to delivery of vacancy management. Can you just expand on that slightly, please?
So within our budgets, we assume a 3% vacancy management target. So we take the staffing budget and reduce it by 3% and say, you need to make that 3% up by vacancies. So within highways operations, because they're fully staffed, well, not fully staffed actually, they have a high capitalisation target against the staff. So if they've got a vacancy, they're only making a small proportion towards that vacancy management because it's just a reduction in the capitalisation. So it's a bit different for them.
And just in terms of the disposal of food waste, I'm not anticipating seeing any figures in this financial year at all, and it will be about this time next year before we start to see any data. Will it be this time next year? Be Q2, won't it? Because the scheme's only coming in from the 1st of April. Yeah. So be interesting to see what, as the disposal authority, what the cost is to us as an authority. Probably as devastating as it is a cost to the 6 districts as selection authorities, given the fact that the grant that the collection authorities are going to receive seems woefully inadequate to provide the capital to do the collection service. Anyway, that's for another place. Councillor Price, you were indicating again, weren't you?
Yeah, thank you. My question goes back to EHCPs, going on to what Councillor Cross has said. We can see there's a significant increase. But are we also seeing a significant increase in appeals when we decline to give an EHCP to a child? And what would the cost be of those appeal processes? Because a parent at any time can appeal a no. It would just be good to get some figures around that.
I suspect Sarah's not going to know the answer to that question, and we can probably get an answer, Nick, from...
Did you come back to me?
Yeah, well, I suspect that Sam will take a note and get an answer from Adam or... Gosh, I can't think of the assistant director's name now.
Sarah Wilkins.
No, Sarah Wilkins, yeah, to do that, Nick. Can I just ask a question on home to school transport? Because I know on the one hand, children's families deal with that, but it is here, and it's really, it might be more a political question to Councillor Amos, because of course, and I'm sure he'll know the answer, and if he doesn't, he'll be able to create one using his skill and expertise as he always does. It was something that, and I can say this with good authority, having been in the Cabinet previously, I can remember when home to school transport not many years ago was costing this authority like £9 or £10 million a year, and the budget now is 45 million, and it's gone up like in about six years. And there was a huge amount of work done on capital versus revenue and invest to save, and previous director John Hobbs and Paul Smith, who's obviously now retired, did a huge amount of work on ranking the schemes in terms of what the capital cost would be to invest to save on the revenue. And by capital cost, I mean making the routes safe to get to school in terms of pavement so that they didn't need to go on the bus. And the number one scheme was, in fact, one in Wyre Forest, and not in my county division, but in an area that I represent on the district council, which is a safer route to school from Wolverley High School, to Wolverley High School. So I guess my question is, and it's one of policy, are we still committed to the capital investments in the schemes that will invest to save?
Thank you. Well, let me start by saying I think you and I are at one on this issue. I think the costs are spiralling out of control, and they may well now be out of control. Fortunately, it's no longer within my portfolio. However, I can say that the portfolio holder is aware of my views, and in all seriousness, he is looking very seriously at structural reform of this, because we cannot any longer sustain these kinds of increases. But I better not stray into somebody else's portfolio, Chair, because I will get told off quite rightly. But certainly...
It's never stopped you before, Councillor Amos, over the years.
No. Well, I've got a new policy now, my New Year's resolution. But seriously, but he is looking at it very seriously, because, in my opinion, for what it's worth, is that the costs are now out of control. And I think the weight of responsibility has gone far too far in favour of the parents, what they request. And the answer is there are appeals, yes, increasingly, because people know their rights. But every time we lose an appeal, the costs go up. And something else is, the opportunity cost principle applies. You're putting more into home to school transport, there's less for something else. It's not a bottomless pit. So, in short, Chair, yep, it's recognised as a problem, almost out of control, if not out of control now, but my colleague is genuinely, and I believe seriously looking at it, to bring it under control.
Thanks, that's very helpful. Any more questions or comments on the finance bit? No, in which case we will now move to the work programme, colleagues. And Sam, just obviously we've got the schedule at the back. Our next meeting is on the 13th of January, and I think we also said our meeting after that is the 13th of March, isn't it? Yeah. So we certainly have the next 2 dates firmed up. January we'll be looking at the budget, the administration's budget, so in terms of 26, 27 and scrutinising that, and an item that we requested back in July, and I know that Gary's working on the item of small town centres because he's consulted Dave and I on some bits and pieces, so we look forward to that, and that'll be a substantive piece. So I think with those 2 items and the usual work programme item to consider future items will be sufficient for January. I'm sure it's good for certainly a couple of hours worth of meeting on those. So March, we made a number of suggestions back in July. So we just need to confirm, Sam, what we're going to bring to the March meeting.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So Gary, help us with which. We've got 4 items that we requested in July. Help us with what you think is realistically, because most of the report writing is going to fall, and the work to be done to bring them to the panel is going to be down to you, I guess. So, yeah. Growth Hub, Malvern Hill Science Park, Worcester 6 Business Park, and Workforce Planning. Happy to have a proposal for a couple of those items then? Nick?
I'd probably suggest the Growth Hub, considering what we've spoken about today.
Yeah.
I don't fall out with that if everyone's happy with the Growth Hub.
Yeah.
And do you want to take another one? Dan?
Just a thought that Worcester 6 we'd agreed to review based on the timings, and that's a rather short update given the fact it's an update on what we've essentially seen happen, as opposed to Malvern, which I think is possibly there's going to be possibly a bigger agenda item in regards to Malvern. So
should we do Growth Hub and Worcester 6 business, yeah?
Yeah, because I'd say the discussion necessary for Malvern might take a little bit longer.
And Malvern can be the next meeting. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Sam, anything else?
Just a suggestion from Councillor
Oh, tourism to go back on the...
A specific area of tourism, the communication, the marketing of tourists. So if I go and visit Worcestershire, for example, I don't see Bromsgrove. If I get off the train in Bromsgrove, I don't see what I can do there. So it's a specific function of not what we have in tourism, but how we're communicating it. Thank you.
Good. Okay. In which case, at 11:47, we're done. Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.